London, spring of 1885. The city seemed confused around her, overlapping sounds too close to be separated. Georgiana Livingston paused at the edge of the pavement and shifted her weight carefully. For a moment she thought of the carriage she had refused. It would have been easier. Still, she liked the street. Only there did she feel free, independent. She tightened her grip on the cane in her right hand. 3 steps to the street, maybe 4. Someone brushed past her on the left without slowing down. Georgiana staggered, but did not fall. She never did. "Excuse me," a woman's voice murmured, already too far away to matter. Georgiana took a steady breath. Smoke, manure, and rain filled her lungs. London smelled nothing like Boston, dirtier, colder, more hurried, less forgiving. She raised the cane and took the first step. A carriage rushed by too close. The wind of its passing tugged at the hem of her dress. Georgiana instinctively stepped back. She counted to 5, tried again. Voices crowded the air, hurried footsteps, no pauses. No one stopped, no one offered help. And she did not want help, not the kind that came wrapped in pity. She only needed 2 seconds of quiet, 2 seconds to hear the space between the wheels. But London never fell silent. She moved forward. The street revealed itself beneath her boots. Uneven stones, deep puddles. Another step. A horn exploded to her right. "Out of the way!" a driver shouted. Georgiana turned her head toward the sound, but it was already too late. The wheels were coming too fast, too close. She had no time to move. A firm hand seized her left arm and yanked her backward. She stumbled. Her back struck something solid. A chest. A man. The carriage passed so near she felt the air rush across her cheek. "Let go," she said, trying to pull away. The hand did not release her. "Not yet," a deep voice replied, unhurried, controlled. She tugged harder. The grip remained steady, strong but careful, never hurting. "I said let go. And I heard you." Anger flared hot in her chest. She did not need heroes, did not need men who believed they knew better than she did how to cross a street. "Sir, I did not ask for your help." "I know." "Then why are you still holding me?" "Because there's another carriage coming." She stopped resisting. She listened. He was right. Heavy wheels approached from the left. The carriage passed. The silence that followed felt louder than the noise before it. The hand was still there. "You can let go now," Georgiana said more quietly. "I could," he replied, "but I won't." She turned her face toward him. She could not see him, but she could feel him. The weight of his gaze, his full attention, fixed entirely on her. "And why not?" "Because you'll try again," he said, his calm infuriating. "And next time, I may not be here." "Good. I don't need you to be." "I know that too," Georgiana frowned. "Then what do you want?" There was a brief pause. The rain continued to fall. His hand remained firm. "To take you to the other side," he said at last. "I didn't agree to that." "Not yet." She should have torn her arm free, should have shouted, should have slammed her cane against the stones and sent that arrogant man straight to hell. But she didn't, because for the first time in 6 months in London, someone was not offering pity. He was simply waiting. "All right," she said finally, "but only this once." "Of course," he replied. She heard the smile in his voice. "Only this once." And then she followed him, her hand steady on his shoulder, allowing herself to be guided forward, step by step in silence. Georgiana did not know it yet, but that hand would never learn how to let her go. If you too cherish period stories, those that whisper like old letters and echo like longing hearts, leave your like and subscribe to the Countess's Tales. Your support allows these narratives to cross oceans and reach more souls around the world. And before you go, tell me in the comments which city and country you're watching from. It's always enchanting to discover how far our stories travel. Chapter 1. The Shoulder That Guided Her. 3 streets, he had said. Just 3. And then they would each go their separate ways. Yet there she was, her fingers gripping the damp wool of his coat, feeling every step he took, steady, even, unhurried. Georgiana knew haste. She knew hesitation. She knew the way people either held her arm too tightly, as if she might break, or too lightly, as if they did not quite know what to do with her. This man did neither. He simply walked, and she followed. "There's a large puddle to the right," he warned quietly. "I'm going to move left." His shoulder shifted slightly. Georgiana adjusted her step without effort. Simple, clear, no awkwardness. She almost smiled. "Thank you," she murmured. "You're welcome." Silence settled between them again, broken only by rain-striking stone, hurried footsteps, and voices passing by. London never stopped for anyone. At 23, Georgiana had already learned that the hard way. "You're American," he said after a moment. It wasn't a question, it was an observation. "I am," she replied. "Boston? How long have you been here? 6 months. And you still cross streets alone in the rain?" There was something different in his voice, not criticism, perhaps curiosity. "I've always crossed streets alone," Georgiana said. "In any weather. Boston must have calmer streets. Not where I lived." He didn't respond right away. His shoulder shifted again, adjusting their path. "Second Street," he said. "Already? You walk quickly." "So do you." This time she caught the smile in his voice. "True." They crossed in silence. Georgiana felt the change beneath her feet, the uneven stones giving way to smoother paving. The rain sounded different here. Fewer hooves, more voices. "Where were you headed?" he asked. Georgiana hesitated. She shouldn't answer. She didn't know this man, didn't even know his name. But he hadn't asked about her cane, hadn't questioned why she was alone, hadn't offered pity. "A bookshop," she said at last. "On Jermyn Street." "Hatchard's?" "Yes. That's still 2 streets away." "I know." "And you meant to cross them alone?" "I always do." His shoulder tensed just slightly. "London isn't Boston," he said carefully. "I noticed. The carriages here don't stop. They don't in Boston either. But you knew the streets there." Georgiana tightened her grip on the wet wool. "And I'll learn these ones too." The silence that followed was heavier. Then he stopped. She stopped with him, confused. There was no street beneath her feet, no immediate traffic. "Why did we stop?" she asked. "Because I need to say something," he replied, turning slightly. She sensed the movement. He was facing her now, close, not invading her space, but near enough that she could feel the warmth of him beneath the cold rain. "What?" she asked cautiously. "You're brave," he said simply. "But bravery doesn't stop carriages." Anger flared instantly. "I don't need a lecture, sir. I'm not lecturing." "Then what are you doing?" "Stating facts." She turned her face away, irritated. Rain struck her cheek, cold and sharp. "I know the facts," she said firmly. "I live with them every day." "I know." "Then why are you treating me as if I don't?" "I'm not," he replied calmly, and somehow that made it worse. "I'm only saying that knowing the facts doesn't make London respect your courage." Georgiana tightened her grip on her cane. "And what do you suggest? That I stay locked inside waiting for someone to escort me everywhere?" "No." "Then what?" There was a pause. The rain felt heavier now, sliding down the back of her neck. "That you accept help when it appears," he said at last. "Without shame, without anger. Just accept it." The words hung between them. Accept help. As if it were simple. As if she hadn't spent her life proving she didn't need anyone. As if London hadn't taught her in 6 months that help almost always came with humiliation attached. But this man hadn't offered pity. He had simply held on. "Third Street," he said, breaking the silence. "The last one." Georgiana drew a steady breath. "All right," she murmured. She lifted her hand again and found his shoulder. Still there, still steady, still guiding. They crossed the final street in silence. When her boots met the pavement outside the bookshop, Georgiana released his shoulder slowly. Her fingers slid from the damp wool, cold, empty. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome." She waited for him to leave, listened for his footsteps to fade, but he remained. "Sir?" she called after a moment. "Raphael," he said. "Raphael Worthington." The name landed with familiar weight. Worthington. "Duke of Queensberry," she murmured. "Yes." Georgiana swallowed. She had just argued with a duke. Walked 3 streets holding a duke's shoulder as if he were merely a man. I'm sorry, Your Grace, I didn't know—" "Raphael," he interrupted firmly. "Just Raphael." She fell silent. "And you?" he asked. "Georgiana," she replied, still dazed. "Georgiana Livingston." "Well then, Georgiana Livingston of Boston," he said, the smile returning to his voice. "It was a pleasure crossing streets with you." And then, finally, he walked away. Georgiana stood in the rain listening as his footsteps disappeared. She should go inside, should forget the arrogant duke who thought he knew better than she did. But her fingers still tingled where they had touched his shoulder. And something quiet, persistent, told her this would not be their last meeting. Chapter 2. The Weight of Goodbyes. Raphael should not have looked back, but he did. Georgiana Livingston was still standing in front of the bookstore with the light rain falling over her. Her cane steady in her right hand, her dark blue dress soaked through, her face slightly tilted up as if feeling the rain against her skin without a care in the world. He stopped 3 meters away. Idiot. He should have kept walking. He had appointments. A meeting with the butler at 3, dinner with his mother at 7. Daniel was coming by at 9 to discuss the Ashby ball. But he couldn't move. She was different, not just because of her blindness. Raphael knew blind people. Lord Hampton had lost his sight in the war. Lady Constance was born blind, but they all depended on someone, always. Georgiana crossed streets on her own, in the rain, in London. It was madness, or something very close to absolute courage. Maybe both. He watched her turn and enter the bookshop. The door closed behind her. The misted glass swallowed her silhouette. Done. She was safe. He could leave now. But his feet wouldn't obey, because he still felt the weight of her hand on his shoulder, light, confident, as if she had believed without hesitation that he wouldn't let her fall. No one trusted him like that. Raphael closed his eyes for a brief moment. "Your Grace?" He turned. The bookshop's butler was standing at the door, sheltered under a black umbrella. "It's been a while since your last visit. Would you like to come in? We have tea for customers." Raphael glanced at the door. The misted glass. He should refuse. He should go home. "Yes," he replied before he could think better of it. "Thank you." The butler stepped aside, holding the door open. Raphael entered. The warmth of the bookshop enveloped him immediately. The scent of paper, aged leather, and hot tea replaced the rain. Dark wooden shelves stretched to the ceiling. Few people walked between the stacks, flipping through books with almost reverent care. Raphael searched for Georgiana with his eyes. He found her at the back near the poetry section. She wasn't alone. A woman in her 30s was beside her, red hair tied up in a simple bun, practical brown dress, no jewelry. A companion, Raphael assumed. The woman was speaking softly, describing something. Georgiana listened with her head tilted slightly. Raphael lingered near the entrance, watching. Georgiana extended her hand and touched the spine of a book. Her fingers slid slowly over the leather. Then a small smile appeared, small, almost imperceptible, but real. Something squeezed Raphael's chest. Something he couldn't name. "Your Grace, are you looking for a particular book?" He turned. The shop attendant was by his side. "No," he replied too quickly. "I'm just looking." "Of course. If you need anything, I'll be right here." The man stepped away. Raphael turned his attention back to Georgiana. Now she was holding a book. The woman beside her opened it to the first page and began reading aloud in a soft voice. Georgiana closed her eyes to listen. Raphael couldn't stop watching her. She was beautiful. He only realized this now, without the light rain between them. Dark brown hair still damp, a delicate face but with an unexpected firmness in her jawline, her determined mouth, her eyes. Raphael. He almost jumped. He turned. Daniel Sutton was behind him, a book tucked under his arm and a mischievous smile on his face. "Daniel," Raphael said, trying to sound casual. "I thought we'd only meet later." "I thought so too," replied the Viscount, "but I was passing by, saw you enter, and got curious." "Curious? You hate bookshops." "I don't hate them. You do. You always say you prefer riding to reading." Raphael furrowed his brow. "I've changed my mind." "Clearly," said Daniel, scanning the room with an attention that was anything but casual. Then his eyes landed on Georgiana. "Or maybe it's not about books." Raphael didn't respond. Daniel had known him since Eton, well enough to know when silence said more than any denial. He was one of the few men Raphael trusted completely, and perhaps the only one whose presence, curiously, never felt out of place next to Henrietta. He still didn't understand why. Nor why, despite all his wit and freedom to roam, Daniel remained uncommitted, as if he were just like his sister, waiting for the right moment to realize something that was already in front of him. Daniel chuckled softly. "Who is she?" "No one." "Liar." "Daniel." Okay. The Viscount raised his hands. "I won't press, but you've been staring at her for 5 minutes." "I haven't." "You have." Raphael took a deep breath, irritated, with Daniel, with himself, with everything. He began, but the sentence died. "Beautiful?" Daniel suggested. "Different." "Ah, that's worse." "What?" Daniel gave him a light tap on the shoulder. "Different women are the most dangerous." Raphael was about to respond, but Georgiana moved. She closed the book and handed it to the woman, saying something softly. The woman nodded and walked toward the counter. Georgiana was left alone, standing between the bookshelves, cane in hand, face turned to books she couldn't see. Raphael watched as she extended her hand again. She touched another spine, slowly, as if she were reading by touch. Maybe she was. "Are you going to talk to her?" Daniel asked in a low voice. "No." "Why?" "Because I've already said goodbye." "And?" "And it would be strange to show up again." Daniel smiled. "You're in a public place. None of this is strange." Raphael knew his friend was right. Still, something held him back. Fear, perhaps. Of what, he didn't know. He just knew that Georgiana Livingston from Boston had crossed 3 streets holding his shoulder, and now he couldn't stop thinking about that hand, that trust, that small smile. "Your Grace?" He turned. The young woman accompanying Georgiana was standing next to him, green eyes, watchful, cautious expression. "Yes?" "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a slight Irish accent. "But Miss Livingston would like to know if your Grace is still in the bookshop." Raphael blinked. She knows I'm here. She heard your voice," the woman replied simply. "She's good with her hearing." Daniel chuckled softly. Raphael looked toward the back of the bookshop. Georgiana was still with her back to him, touching the books, but her shoulders were tense. She was waiting. "Yes," he said at last, "I'm still here." The woman smiled slightly. "Then perhaps your Grace would like to join us. Miss Livingston is undecided between Byron and Wordsworth." Daniel let out a laugh. Raphael shot him a warning glance and turned back to the woman. "Would that be appropriate?" "Miss Livingston doesn't always worry about what's appropriate," the Irish woman replied, a playful glint in her eyes. "Just with honesty." Raphael hesitated for a moment. Then he walked toward the back of the bookshop. Daniel took the cue and slowly drifted away, pulling a heavily serious treatise on port statistics and import tariffs from the shelf, as though that was exactly what he'd come to find. Georgiana turned her face when she heard his steps, and smiled. Small. Again. But this time, the smile was for him. Chapter 3. The Voice That Came Back. Georgiana knew his voice the moment he stepped into the bookshop. Low, even, impossible to mistake. For 1 second, she forgot to breathe. Her fingertips froze on the spine of the book she'd been tracing. She had arrived a few minutes before Sarah. They'd agreed to meet inside. Georgiana liked choosing slowly, touching each volume, taking her time before her companion arrived to translate the shelves into words. She was tired of being guided like a fragile ornament. She preferred to be seen as someone who made her own choices. And yet, he had come back. Why? First, she had to be sure. "Sarah," she murmured. "Is there a tall man near the entrance? Dark coat, the kind of presence people notice without meaning to?" "There is," Sarah whispered back. "He just spoke to the clerk." Georgiana tightened her grip on her cane. "And is he looking this way?" A pause, too brief to be innocent. "He is," Sarah said, and Georgiana caught the curiosity in her tone. "He's been watching for a few minutes. Nearly 5. 5. Something warm and unsettled tightened in Georgiana's stomach. Pride and irritation, and something dangerously close to hope, all tangled together without permission. He was here, looking at her, and yet he wasn't coming closer. Why? She reached for another book, pretending focus, but her heart was beating too fast. Her palms were damp inside her gloves, still not fully dry from the rain. "Do you want me to go to him?" Sarah asked quietly. Georgiana hesitated. "There's another gentleman beside him now," Sarah added, watching. "A bit shorter, looks familiar, laughs easily. The other doesn't. He just listens." So, he wasn't alone. "Did he say anything?" Georgiana asked, forcing her voice to sound casual. "Not much," Sarah replied, but he tilted his head to hear the man beside him, as if he didn't want to miss a single word. The tightness in Georgiana's belly sharpened. Not jealousy, not exactly. More like a private frustration that he existed beyond the reach of her hand and her ear. She should say no, pretend she hadn't noticed, pick any book and leave. But her fingers still remembered the wet wool of his coat, the steady shoulder beneath her touch, and she needed to know. "Yes," she said at last, "go to him, ask if he's still here." She drew a breath. "And mind your manners. He's the Duke of Queensberry." Sarah didn't question it. She simply went. Georgiana stayed perfectly still, trying to steady her breathing. She heard Sarah's voice at a distance, then his, and then footsteps, coming toward her, firm, unhurried, certain. The same footsteps she had followed across 3 streets, as if the world around them was too dangerous to trust. But he was not. Georgiana turned her face slightly, and she smiled. She couldn't help it. "Miss Livingston," he said, stopping a few steps away. "Your Grace." "Raphael," he corrected, that calm control in his voice again. "You remember." "I do." Sarah drifted away with practiced discretion. Georgiana could feel her presence a few yards off, pretending to browse, as though poetry might distract an Irishwoman from what was unfolding. "Sarah tells me you're having trouble choosing," Raphael said. "Between Byron and Wordsworth." "Why not both?" "Because I already have Byron at home." "Then Wordsworth." "I've read him 3 times." "And Byron?" 5. He laughed, low, genuine. Heat rose in Georgiana's face, as if London itself had decided to tease her. "Something funny?" she asked, trying to sound unimpressed. "No," he said. "Just, you reread poetry 5 times." "I listen," she corrected. "Sarah reads to me." "Ah." She waited for it. The wrong comment. The predictable question. The pity dressed up as politeness, but he gave her none of that. "Which is your favorite?" he asked simply. "Byron." Georgiana blinked, inside the way she still blinked like any other woman. "She walks in beauty." "A classic." "And yours?" "I prefer Wordsworth." "Why?" "Because he's real." Georgiana laughed, caught off guard. "Byron is passion," she countered. "Wordsworth is nature." "Exactly," Raphael said. "Wordsworth is quiet. Byron is theatre." She was ready to argue, but stopped. Because he was right, and it annoyed her. "You have a point," she admitted. "Thank you. Still, I prefer Byron." Of course you do. And what is that supposed to mean? That you like intensity, he said simply. Crossing streets alone in the rain, arguing with dukes, listening to Byron 5 times. Her face warmed again. You don't know me. Not yet. The words hung between them. Not yet. Why did you come back? She asked softly. He didn't answer at once. Georgiana could hear his breathing, close enough that it didn't feel accidental. I don't know, he said finally. I should have left, but I couldn't. Why? Because I wanted to be sure you were all right. I'm all right. I know. Then why are you still here? The pause stretched, long enough to change the air. Because I wanted to see you smile again. For a moment, the world went still. No one had ever said that to her. I smiled, she murmured, when you arrived. I know, he said. And I wanted to see it again. Georgiana had no words. Your Grace, are you flirting with me? She dared, feeling ridiculous and brave in the same breath. Raphael, he corrected again, and there was something almost gentle in it. And yes, I am. Why? Because you're interesting. Interesting, she repeated, testing the weight of the word. Also beautiful, also fascinating, but above all, interesting. She laughed, helplessly. You're far too direct. So are you. Georgiana tilted her head. Perhaps it's an American flaw, she said with a half-smile. They say we ask too many questions, and here, that's rarely well received. He didn't answer. He simply stayed, present, attentive, as if his attention didn't need permission to exist. And then Georgiana realized with a strange clarity that he was looking at her as if she were whole. Not a problem, not a lesson, not a tragedy. A woman. Sarah cleared her throat discreetly in the background. I must go, Georgiana said. My mother will pretend she hasn't noticed the rains until she does. Raphael laughed. Clever. She is. Georgiana turned, searching for Sarah with her cane. Her companion was there at once. Ready, miss? Yes. Georgiana took a few steps, then stopped, turned her face back toward Raphael. Thank you, she said, for everything. You're welcome. She waited. He didn't offer to escort her, didn't reach for her arm, didn't try to guide her. He simply stood there, waiting. And somehow that undid her more than any gesture of protection ever could. Will you be at the Ashby Ball in 2 weeks? She asked, before the silence could defeat her. For a heartbeat, he sounded surprised. Then the smile returned, calm, unhurried. I was already planning to go, he said with a quiet trace of humor, but now I have a better reason. The words didn't feel light. They sank too deep for that. My sister is engaged to their son, she said at last. Then, Raphael replied without hesitation, I can't wait to see you there. Yes, that was all. Georgiana turned away before she could say more. Sarah stepped in at exactly the right moment, guiding her through the aisles, handling the payment, opening the umbrella at the door. Georgiana didn't look back, but she knew. He was still there. And for the first time in 6 months in London, she looked toward a ball not as obligation, but as a promise. Chapter 4. The Ball That Wouldn't Arrive. Raphael stayed inside the bookshop long after Georgiana had gone. Rain still drummed against the windows when Daniel wandered back over, hands in his pockets, wearing the kind of easy smile that meant he'd already understood everything. So, the Viscount drawled, feigning innocence. Interesting, was she? Raphael didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the closed door as if it might open again. Georgiana had vanished into the rain with her Irish companion, but her laugh still echoed in his head, soft, real, and entirely unexpected. Raphael, Daniel pressed. She argues, Raphael said at last. What? Poetry. Byron properly argues. Daniel laughed. And that's good? It's different. You keep using that word. Raphael turned to him, too irritated to pretend indifference. Because it's true. When was the last time anyone argued with me about something that actually mattered? Daniel paused, thinking. Lady Henrietta argues with you constantly. My sister doesn't count. Fair, Daniel said, folding his arms. But you do realize what you're doing, don't you? What? Getting obsessed. Raphael frowned. I'm not obsessed. You are. I've known you since Eton. I know when something hooks you. She didn't hook me. Liar, Daniel said, gesturing toward the door. You're going to the Ashby ball just to see her again. I was already going. You were, Daniel corrected, complaining. Now you're waiting. Raphael opened his mouth to deny it, and the denial died before it could form, because Daniel was right. He was waiting. She's American, Raphael said, as if that explained everything. And my mother will have a fit. Your mother has fits as a hobby. True. Daniel's hand landed on Raphael's shoulder, firm enough to be friendship, light enough not to be pity. I'm not telling you to marry the girl. I'm telling you to be careful. Women who argue Byron don't bow their heads easily. Raphael smiled almost to himself. She prefers Byron. I prefer Wordsworth. Worse, Daniel said gravely. Poetic incompatibility is fatal. Raphael shoved him, laughing. Idiot. Always, Daniel said, already drifting away. Come on, before you decide to chase her through the rain and cause a literary scandal. Raphael cast one last look at the bookshop door. Then he followed his friend. Between the bookshop and the ball, nothing was officially arranged, yet nothing was left loose either. There were no clear promises, no letters that could be hidden in drawers. Only the silent agreement of two people who didn't want to lose the thread that had begun to form. Sarah understood before Georgiana ever needed to explain. She became a bridge with flawless discretion. She never carried long messages, only practical observations, spoken as lightly as weather or routine. We'll be on Jermyn Street near dusk. Miss Livingston intends to walk after tea. That was enough. London did the rest. On a late afternoon when the wind cut colder than expected, Raphael appeared by chance on the pavement of Jermyn Street. He didn't offer to guide her. He didn't take her arm. He simply walked close enough that no one dared jostle her, and far enough that it didn't look like possession. He said 2 sentences, quoted a line, listened to her reply with an attention far too intense for a man who claimed he was in a hurry. Then he left, as if the encounter had been too brief to matter, though he'd calculated that single minute since dawn. 2 days later, Georgiana noticed him first. Recognizing his voice in a church corridor her mother insisted on visiting. When Raphael stopped beside her, his presence didn't feel unlikely. It felt inevitable. He brushed the marble of the pew, only to signal that he was there. Mind the step, he murmured. And she hated how right it sounded. Sarah became an unwilling courier. Notes began to appear, folded with precise care, always in Raphael's steady hand. Too restrained to be romantic, too personal to be innocent. The sky is clear today. I don't promise what I cannot control, but I would like to hear you argue poetry again. I passed Hatchard's. The clerk asked after you before he spoke of books. I'm not sure whether that is praise or an accusation. If you insist on crossing streets in the rain again, at least choose one where I can be present. Georgiana never answered in writing. She answered by appearing, sometimes in a public garden, under the excuse of accompanying Penelope, sometimes in rooms too crowded for Raphael to do more than incline himself toward her, as if hearing her voice were a quiet kind of disobedience, and when they didn't meet, the absence had weight, as if London were too large to allow them easily, and too small to keep them apart. 2 weeks was nothing, and it was enough to create a habit. Habits were dangerous. 2 weeks after the day in the bookshop, Raphael stood in his room dressing for the Ashby ball. You're nervous, Henrietta said from the doorway. Raphael adjusted his cravat for the 3rd time. I'm not. You are, she said. You never adjust it 3 times. He stopped, meeting her gaze in the mirror. Henrietta was 26, sharp-minded and entirely impatient with self-deception. Still unmarried, a feat Raphael never understood considering the mother they shared, she had escaped through sheer stubbornness every suitable match presented to her for years. Her light brown hair was pinned with studied perfection, Her eyes were far too attentive for a woman pretending indifference. "What do you want, Hetta?" "To know why you're nervous." "I'm not nervous. Mother said you're meeting someone tonight." Raphael turned at once. "What?" "At the ball," Henrietta continued, stepping inside. "Lady Ashby has the perfect candidate, a count's daughter, beautiful, educated, mother's dream." Raphael's stomach dropped. "I didn't ask for that." "Mother never asks permission," Henrietta said, settling into the armchair. "You know that." "I'm not meeting anyone." "You are," she replied, "because she'll drag you over." Raphael raked a hand through his hair, annoyed. Before, he always slipped away. But now Georgiana would be in that room, and the last thing he wanted was to be trapped in empty conversation while she stood somewhere within reach. "Hetta," he said carefully, "I need a favor." Henrietta lifted a brow. "I'm listening. If Mother tries to introduce me to someone, help me escape." Henrietta studied him for a long moment. "Why?" "Because I need to." "That's not an answer." Raphael hesitated, then yielded, as if unlocking a door out of habit. "I met someone." Henrietta's expression shifted, surprise, curiosity, and something quietly satisfied. "When?" 2 weeks ago." "Who?" "An American." Henrietta gave a short laugh. "Mother will die." "I know. And you want to see her again?" It wasn't a question. Raphael nodded. Henrietta rose, crossed to him, and rested her hand on his arm. "Is she special?" Raphael breathed in. "I don't know yet," he said. "But I think she is." Henrietta smiled, genuine. "Then I'll help you," she said. "But afterward you tell me everything." Agreed. The Ashby ball was crowded. Raphael arrived with his mother and Henrietta at 8. The mansion glittered under hundreds of candles, music, laughter, the measured rhythm of steps. He had always hated balls, but tonight his eyes searched for something else. Dark hair, a dress he wouldn't know how to describe, a discreet cane. "Raphael," his mother called, firm. "Come, I want to introduce you to someone." He turned. Lady Catherine stood beside a blonde young woman, flawless. "This is Lady Victoria Marlowe," she announced, "daughter of the Earl of Somerset." Raphael flicked a quick glance at Henrietta. His sister made a tiny grimace. "Endure." "Lady Victoria," Raphael said politely, "the pleasure is mine." Conversation began. Weather, music, nothing. But his eyes kept searching. Then he saw her. Across the room, near the doors leading to the veranda. Georgiana Livingston, a wine-colored gown. Her hair pinned into elaborate curls, her cane in her right hand, alone. No. A man approached, tall, fair-haired, far too confident. Something darkened in Raphael's chest. The man spoke. Georgiana smiled, polite, distant, not the bookshop smile. The man offered his arm. She hesitated, then accepted. They walked toward the dance floor and began to dance. Raphael's jaw tightened. "Your Grace," Lady Victoria said. "Are you listening?" "Forgive me," Raphael murmured. "I need air." And he crossed the ballroom, straight, toward Georgiana. Chapter 5. The Wrong Dance. Georgiana hated balls. She always had, even in Boston, even before London. But here, it was worse. In Boston, people at least pretended to be polite. In London, they simply looked, whispered, measured, judged. And she felt the stares. She always felt them. The blind American, the magnate's daughter. Rich, but flawed. Pretty, but useless. 6 months had passed and nothing had changed. "Miss Livingston," a voice said at her side, male, far too confident, "may I have the honor of this dance?" She recognized the tone before the name even settled in her mind. Some lord, introduced half an hour ago by her mother, a name too long, too proud of itself. That British aristocratic accent that always sounded like contempt dressed as manners. "Lord Hargrave," she replied, with the careful politeness she'd perfected. "A magnificent ball, wouldn't you say?" She nearly laughed, Nearly. I'm sure it is. There was a brief pause. Then he laughed, too loud, too false. Yes, forgive me. I forgot. He hadn't forgotten. No one ever forgot. But the music, he hurried to fix it, is exquisite. You must be able to enjoy that. Georgiana tightened her grip on her cane. You must be able to enjoy that. As if she were a child who needed to be soothed. Yes, she said coolly. I can hear. So, may I have this dance? She should refuse. She knew she should. But she could feel her mother somewhere in the room alert, and Penelope had begged her, please try to fit in just this once. All right, she murmured. Before taking his arm, she passed her cane to Sarah, who waited at the edge of the ballroom, watchful as always. The motion was automatic, learned over years of silent concessions. Hargrave offered his arm. Too tall. Wrong. Georgiana hesitated, then rested her hand on the dark sleeve of his coat. His hand closed over hers with too much force, not support but possession. He guided her toward the center of the room. The music began. A waltz, predictable. His hand settled at her waist, too firm, too close. A familiar discomfort crawled up her spine. You dance very well, he remarked as they turned. For someone who, well, for someone blind. Thank you, she answered without warmth. You must have practiced a great deal. I did. In Boston? Yes. It must be different there. More simple, I imagine. Anger rose, familiar, contained, buried too deep to explode. Not so different, she said. London has far more to offer, he continued, pleased with himself. Culture, history, refinement. He talked without stopping, about London, about superiority, about how fortunate she ought to feel to be here. Georgiana stopped listening. Instead, she focused on sound, the music, the steps, the laughter, the constant murmur of the room. She searched for one voice, low, calm. Unlike all the others, but she couldn't find it. Raphael had said he would be here, that they would meet. Perhaps he'd changed his mind. Perhaps he'd decided she was too complicated, too different. Perhaps... The music shifted. Hargrave spun her a little harder. Georgiana stumbled. Careful, he said, catching her with too much force. We don't want accidents. As if she were fragile, as if she needed to be protected from herself. Georgiana drew in a slow breath. Counted to 5. 1 more minute. Just one. Miss Livingston, Hargrave said, lower now. May I be frank? I'd rather you weren't. He laughed as if she'd made a joke. You're an admirable woman, despite the circumstances. She went still. Circumstances. Your condition. And yet you have grace, beauty, and your father's fortune is considerable. She knew exactly where this was going. It always went there. It would be a shame, he continued, for you to return to America without a suitable husband. Suitable. Someone who understands your limitations and accepts them. Nausea hit fast. How generous. It isn't generosity, he said, serious. It's pragmatism. You need protection, and I need, well, the Livingston fortune would be useful. There it was, the bare truth. He didn't care about her. He never would, just like the others. Georgiana stopped moving. Thank you for the dance, Lord Hargrave, she said, steady. But I'm tired. But the music hasn't. I'm tired. She drew a breath. Just tell me where the veranda is. She let go of his arm and took an uncertain step, more to get away than because she knew the direction. Her cane was back in her hand. She tapped it once, not to find her way, but to make space. Miss Livingston, wait. A hand touched her shoulder. Not Hargrave's. Another one. Larger, steadier, familiar. Georgiana's breath caught. You promised me this dance, a deep voice said behind her. Raphael. She turned slowly. She couldn't see him, but she could feel him. The presence, the warmth, the solidness of him. Your Grace, Hargrave said, startled. I didn't realize. Now you do, Raphael cut in, calm and firm. If you'll excuse us. Hargrave muttered something and withdrew. Georgiana's heart was beating far too fast. "I didn't promise you a dance," she said quietly. "I know," Raphael answered, honest, "but you looked like you needed to be removed from that. I didn't need rescuing." "You did," he said with restrained amusement. "You were 2 seconds away from hitting him with your cane." Her mouth curved before she could stop it. "How would you know?" "I recognize that expression. You can't see my expression. I was facing away." "I can feel it," he said. "You go completely tense, like you are now." She angled herself toward him. "I'm not tense. You are." "I'm not. Want me to prove it?" With effortless ease, Raphael took her cane and handed it back to Sarah, who waited near the edge of the room. Before Georgiana could protest, his hand found hers, large, warm, ungloved. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Dancing," he said simply. The music changed, slower, softer. His other hand settled at her waist, no pressure, no invasion, just there. And he began to move. Georgiana followed without thinking. Her body knew the rhythm, but everything was different. Hargrave had guided her like an object. Raphael guided her like a partner. Each step was clear, safe. She didn't have to guess. She only had to trust. "You dance well," she said after a moment. "So do you." Hargrave said that too, with far more condescension. "Hargrave is an idiot." She laughed. "Couldn't help it. You shouldn't talk like that about other lords." "Why not?" "Because you're a duke. You're meant to have the decorum." "Decorum is boring," he replied, "and Hargrave is still an idiot." They turned, smooth, natural. Georgiana closed her eyes for a heartbeat and let herself feel it, the music, the motion, his steady hand in hers. And for the first time in 6 months, she didn't feel out of place. "You were late," she murmured. "Was I?" "You said we'd meet here. You didn't come." "I did," he said. "You were busy dancing with idiots." She smiled. "Jealous, Your Grace?" "Raphael," he corrected. "And yes, a little." Her heart leapt. "Why?" His hand at her waist drew a fraction closer, still proper, but unmistakably nearer. "Because I'd rather it had been me," he said, "dancing with you." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever been jealous of her. "You're too direct," she whispered. "You've said that." "Because it's true." "Would you rather I lied?" "No." "Then I'll keep being direct." The music began to fade. The dance was ending too soon. "Raphael," she said before she could lose her nerve. "Yes?" "Thank you for pulling me out of that conversation." "You're welcome," he said, stopping, but not releasing her hand. "Georgiana?" "Yes?" "There's less crowding near the veranda," he murmured. "If you'd like, I can take you there." She should have said no, gone back to her mother, been sensible, but his fingers were still wrapped around hers, steady, calm, and she didn't want him to let go. "You may," she said. Raphael leaned closer, just enough for only her to hear. "It's to the right," he murmured. "Take my arm." She did, and together they left the dance floor, leaving behind the stares and whispers toward a place where, for a few stolen moments, there would be only the two of them. Chapter 6. The Veranda. Raphael didn't let go of her arm until they reached the veranda. The night air hit Georgiana's face, sharp, clean, immediate relief. Inside, the ballroom had been stifling. Too warm, too crowded, too full. Out here was different, quiet, empty, just the two of them, and the music leaking through the doors behind them like a distant secret. Raphael kept a proper distance. Georgiana noticed. She drew a steady breath beside him, her shoulders easing, only slightly, but enough. "Better?" Raphael asked softly. "Much." Georgiana took a few steps toward the balustrade. Her cane touched stone, confirming the edge. She stopped there and placed both hands on the cold marble. Raphael remained where he was, watching. Her wine-colored gown caught the moonlight. Her curls left the back of her neck exposed. There was something about her that wasn't merely beauty. It was presence. You can speak, you know, Georgiana said without turning. I can hear it when you're staring at me. Raphael smiled. I'm not staring. You are. How would you know? Because you go too quiet when you're looking at someone. He stepped closer. And how do you know that? Because you did the same thing in the bookshop, she said, turning her head slightly. 5 minutes in silence, just watching. Heat rose in his face. Daniel told you. No, Sarah noticed. Your companion is observant. She has to be, Georgiana replied simply. For me. Raphael leaned against the stone beside her, close, not touching, but close enough that his warmth existed in the air between them. Hargrave truly is an idiot, he said after a moment. Georgiana laughed softly. You're not going to let that go, are you? No, what he said about circumstances and limitations. Anger returned, controlled, as if you needed pity. He isn't the first, she said, with a calm that unsettled him, and he won't be the last. That doesn't make it acceptable. It makes it common. Raphael looked at her face lit by moonlight, at that serenity that felt trained, earned. You've gotten used to it, he said slowly. Being treated that way? I had to. You shouldn't have. Georgiana turned her face toward him. Her eyes found almost exactly where he stood. Almost. The world doesn't work like that, Raphael. It was the first time she'd said his name without hesitation. But it should, he replied, firm. But it doesn't. Then we have to try to change it. She smiled, sad, tired. You can't change the whole world. I can try. Why? The question hung there. Raphael had no neat answer. He'd known Georgiana only weeks. 3 streets, a bookshop, carefully accidental meetings, conversations cut off before they became confessions. He didn't know her fully, and still. Because you deserve more, he said at last. More than pitying stares. More than men who only know how to see limits. Georgiana went very still. And what do you see? She asked, almost a whisper. Raphael turned fully toward her, close now, too close. Courage, intelligence, an infuriating stubbornness. She laughed, lighter. Stubborn? You cross streets alone in the rain. You could take a carriage. If that isn't stubbornness, it's determination. It's both. She shook her head, smiling. Raphael lifted his hand, hesitated, then touched her arm lightly, an unspoken warning. She didn't pull away. And what else do you see? She asked. Someone who argues about poetry with fire, he said. Someone who laughs when she should be furious. Someone who makes me want to cross streets in the rain just to feel you holding my shoulder again. The silence thickened. Georgiana turned fully now. Her hands left the marble, reached, found the shape of him, so near she felt his presence filling the air. Raphael. Yes? You're flirting again. I am. Why? Because I want to. Her hands closed on the front of his coat. People will talk. Raphael hesitated. Just a breath. They will, he said lower. And that worries me, Aunt, for you. My family won't approve, Georgiana continued carefully. I'm American. I know. And I'm blind. I know that too. She inhaled, gathering courage. And still, you don't care. He stepped closer and covered her hands with his. No, he said simply. I don't care. Her fingers trembled beneath his. No one has ever said that to me. Then everyone is an idiot. She laughed, a brief, unsteady sound, as if she were still learning she was allowed. You're impossible. So are you. This is madness, she murmured now, quieter. I know. Silence stretched between them, dense, not awkward, expectant. Georgiana lifted her face toward him, guiding herself not by sight, but by his breathing, by the closeness so near it seemed to occupy the night around her. Raphael, Georgiana, what are we doing? Before he could answer, Georgiana raised her hand. The motion was slow, announced, respectful. May I? She asked, her gloved fingers hovering inches from his face. The glove gets in the way a bit, but I can still feel enough." Raphael understood before he spoke. He leaned in, accepting without hurry, without questions. "If you'd like, I can help you take the glove off," he murmured, careful, too careful for a public place. "But if not, you already know where I am." Her fingers touched his jawline first, then the curve of his cheek. The contact was light, attentive, not curiosity but concentration, like reading something that mattered. She traced the shape of him with care, feeling the texture of his skin, the shadow of recent stubble, the unexpected firmness beneath her touch. Raphael didn't move, didn't dare. He received her hand the way a man receives a confession. "You go very quiet when you're looking at someone," she murmured. "You can feel it." Her thumb rose toward his temple, hesitated, then withdrew. Not like regret, like recognition of a boundary. "You're different than I imagined," she said thoughtfully. "Is that good or bad?" "I'm still deciding." "Fair," he said. "If you conclude I'm disappointing, I promise a formal apology." She laughed softly. "I think that risk has already passed." Her hand lowered slowly. The air between them still vibrated when... "Raphael Worthington." They stepped apart at once, as if the touch had been a secret exposed. Henrietta stood in the doorway, eyes far too sharp for genuine surprise, a dangerously amused smile on her mouth. "Mother is looking for you," she said, "and Lady Victoria is visibly frustrated." "I wasn't—" "And Daniel is trying to distract the entire room," Henrietta added, casting a quick glance toward Georgiana. "With very little success." Raphael exhaled, already defeated. "Daniel always tries to look calmer than he is," Henrietta continued, half smiling. "He's terrible at it when he cares too much." Raphael frowned. "And since when have you been paying that much attention to Daniel?" "Since someone has to keep the world from collapsing while you disappear onto verandas," she replied, too dry to be uninterested. Heat rushed to Georgiana's face. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't—" "No," Henrietta cut in, firm. "This is definitely not on you." Raphael drew a breath. Nothing had been said aloud. Nothing had happened that could be described with clarity. And still, everything had changed. "No," Henrietta repeated, sharper. "You have nothing to apologize for. My brother is the one who should know better." "Hetta," Raphael warned. "What?" She turned to Georgiana. "You're the American?" "I am. Georgiana Livingston." "Henrietta Worthington," she replied with a smile too direct to be casual. "A pleasure. Daniel has already mentioned my brother's unusual enthusiasm. Hetta, I will kill you." "You won't," she blinked. "But we need to go back before Mother comes out here herself." Georgiana nodded and reached for her cane, her hands still faintly unsteady. Raphael stepped toward her. "Georgiana—" "It's fine," she said too quickly. "Your sister is right." But it wasn't. He could hear it in the rigidity of her shoulders, in the way she gripped the cane too tightly. "May I see you tomorrow?" he asked, low. She hesitated. "Hyde Park, 3 o'clock, she said at last. "If it rains, I won't go." "It won't rain," he replied with no certainty at all. She smiled, small but real. "We'll see." Henrietta guided her back toward the ballroom. Raphael stayed alone on the veranda, heart racing, hands still warm. He'd almost kissed her. Almost, and tomorrow he would try again. Chapter 7. The Weight of Expectations. Georgiana couldn't sleep that night. She lay in the dark, following the familiar rhythm of the clock as it measured the hours. 1, 2, 3. The silence of the house felt sharper than usual, almost watchful. Her fingers still held the memory of his face, the firm line of his jaw, the warmth of his skin beneath her careful touch, and the way Raphael had gone completely still, not from embarrassment, but from respect. As if he understood that gesture said more than words ever could. She turned onto her side, annoyed with herself. It was madness. She'd only known Raphael for a few weeks, nothing that should justify the constant tightness in her chest, but her body did not answer to logic. A little after midnight, soft footsteps stopped on the other side of her door. "Miss?" Sarah's voice came low. "Are you still awake?" Georgiana sat up. "I am. Come in." The door opened with care. Sarah slipped inside without lighting a lamp and sat on the edge of the bed, just as she had since Boston, whenever she sensed sleep would not come, no matter the hour. Couldn't rest? No. Because of the Duke? Georgiana didn't answer. She didn't need to. Sarah exhaled. "He seems like a good man. He seems. But I don't know what this could become," Georgiana said at last. "Or what it could cost." Sarah went quiet for a moment. "You touched his face last night." Heat rose instantly. "You saw?" "I saw enough to understand," the Irishwoman replied without judgment. "It wasn't a scandal, but it also wasn't something small." Georgiana closed her eyes. "He didn't treat me like I was fragile, Sarah." "I know. Or like I was something to be fixed." "I know that too. And that frightens me more than anything else." Sarah took her hand. "Then go to the park tomorrow," she said, firm. "Look at it in daylight. Find out if he's worth carrying the weight that comes with it." Georgiana nodded. The next morning at 9, she went down the stairs, counting each step, with the familiarity of someone who had memorized every imperfection of the house. The cold banister under her left hand, the cane marking the rhythm ahead of her, the slight dip on the third step that always demanded an adjustment. The Livingstons' house still didn't feel entirely hers. It creaked in unexpected places, held new silences, but the stairs already obeyed her body. Going down alone was part of her routine, a small act of independence no one commented on, but one she defended every single day. The family was already at the table. "Good morning, my dear," her father said. Edward Livingston's voice was deep and steady, carrying the familiar scent of paper and tobacco. "Did you sleep well?" "I did," she lied. She sat in her usual chair, 8 steps from the entry. Sarah had arranged everything with precision. "You left early last night," Penelope remarked from across the table. "I didn't see you after midnight." "I was tired." "Apparently not that tired," her mother murmured. Georgiana's cup froze halfway to her lips. "Mother?" Diana Livingston set her own cup down with a sharp, dry sound. "Lady Ashby mentioned you were seen on the veranda with the Duke of Queensberry." Silence fell like a physical weight. "Georgiana," her father said slowly, "is that true?" "It is." "Alone?" her mother asked. "Sarah was nearby." "But not with you?" "No." Another silence. "You understand how that will be interpreted," Edward said. "I do." "Do you?" Diana's voice sharpened. "We came to London to introduce you to society, not to feed its commentary." "We spoke," Georgiana said, controlled. "Nothing more than that. A conversation away from everyone at night on a veranda. Lady Henrietta found us," Georgiana answered. "Nothing improper happened." "After," Diana corrected. "Long enough for you to be noticed." Georgiana tightened her grip on the cup. "What do you expect me to do?" she demanded quietly. "Disappear? Stand perfectly still so I won't trouble anyone?" "I expect caution," her mother replied. "Because you cannot afford mistakes. Because I'm blind." The silence that followed was answer enough. "So, that's what I am," Georgiana continued. "A risk?" "That's not what I meant." "But it's what you said." She stood. Her chair scraped the floor. "I won't keep listening to this." "Georgiana," her mother warned. "No." "Georgiana Livingston—" "Diana," Edward cut in, firm. "Enough!" Her father's hand touched her shoulder. "Sit down, my dear." She obeyed. "Now," he said, "let's be honest. This Duke, do you like him?" The question disarmed everything. "I do," she admitted. "And he respects me." "Does he treat you with dignity?" "Yes." "Even knowing you're blind?" "Especially then," she said. "He doesn't try to correct me." Her father fell thoughtful. "Queensberry doesn't need money," he said at last. "If he approached you, it's because he saw something." "Or because he's curious," her mother murmured. "Still," Edward said, "Georgiana may meet him today." What? Diana snapped. In Hyde Park, at 3, Sarah said from the side of the room. That is unacceptable. She is not a child, her father replied. I will go with her, Sarah added. Silence. Back before 5, Edward decided. And Sarah stays close. Agreed, Georgiana whispered. By 2:30 she was ready. A pale green dress, her hair pinned simply, cane steady in her hand. You look beautiful, Sarah said. I'm terrified. I know. And if he doesn't show? Sarah's mouth curved to one side. Men who stand perfectly still while you touch their face don't usually disappear. Georgiana laughed, shaky, but real. And then they left for Hyde Park, to find out whether the impossible Duke was, in fact, worth the weight of expectations. Chapter 8. The Choice. Raphael arrived at Hyde Park at 2:50, 20 minutes early. Idiot. He walked to the Serpentine and stopped near the bridge. Open, visible, proper. The deliberate opposite of the veranda the night before. The sun shone as if it had nothing to prove. Clear sky, not a single cloud. He'd promised her it wouldn't rain. You're early. Raphael turned. Daniel was there, hands in his pockets, looking far too relaxed for someone who had clearly been sent by Henrietta. What are you doing here? Raphael asked. Moral support, the Viscount said. Your sister thought it wise to have me confirm you still remember how to breathe before an important engagement. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, Daniel replied, tilting his head. I'm observing. You never arrived 20 minutes early for anything. I arrived early because... Raphael stopped. Because you're nervous, Daniel finished, pleased with himself. You've adjusted your tie 3 times. Raphael dropped the fabric, irritated. That means nothing. It means everything, Daniel said calmly. It means that for the first time in a very long while, something matters enough to knock you slightly out of order. He smiled, amused. Relax. She likes you. You don't even know her. I know you, Daniel said in that casual tone that was never innocent, and I know my future wife well enough to recognize when Henrietta decides to stake her name on someone. She doesn't waste time on lost causes. Raphael frowned. Future wife? Daniel glanced at him, almost entertained. Not official yet. You two, Raphael began, then stopped. Understanding arrived all at once. Too late to be ignored. How long? Long enough for you to realize it now and wonder how you didn't see it sooner. Raphael let out a short breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. My sister has always been far too efficient for her own good. And you've always been far too busy pretending you don't notice things, Daniel countered. Raphael shook his head, staring out at the lake. The swans cut through the water with their usual serenity, as if nothing important had just rearranged itself in the world. You took your time, he said at last. Maybe, Daniel allowed. Or maybe you simply waited for the moment when neither of you could pretend it wasn't serious anymore. Raphael was quiet for a beat, then nodded. She's going to dominate you. It's already happening, Daniel replied, without a hint of complaint. The corner of Raphael's mouth lifted briefly. Good luck, he said. I'll need it, Daniel agreed. But not as much as you. Raphael gave him a quick look, then turned back to the water. My mother is furious, he said softly. Naturally, Daniel answered. You vanished from a ball with an American. I didn't vanish, Raphael corrected automatically. You went to a veranda, with an American, alone. For exactly long enough for London to begin inventing stories. Henrietta interrupted. After the damage was done, Daniel said, giving his shoulder a light tap. She spent the entire morning talking about Lady Victoria. Raphael felt his jaw tighten. I don't care about Lady Victoria. I know. Your mother simply hasn't accepted that yet. Daniel studied him for a moment, more serious now. Are you truly considering this? I am. Georgiana Livingston as Duchess? Yes. That doesn't frighten you? Raphael answered without hesitation. What frightens me more is the idea of not trying. Daniel let out a slow breath, like a man acknowledging something inevitable. Then be honest with her, about everything. About your mother, about the weight of what you're offering. I will. Good, Daniel said, starting to walk away. Because she deserves to know exactly what she's stepping into. He took 2 steps, then looked back over his shoulder. Oh, and if this works, I'll be demanding credit, at minimum for keeping Henrietta occupied long enough not to interfere more than necessary. Raphael almost smiled. Daniel left. And then Raphael saw her. On the far side of the bridge, a pale green dress, simple, her hair pinned without fuss, the cane steady in her right hand. Sarah walked beside her, alert, discreet. Georgiana stopped. Her face turned slightly searching. Raphael moved toward her. Georgiana, he called softly. She turned at once, and she smiled. A small, genuine smile meant only for him. Raphael, she said, you came. I promised. And it didn't rain. I promised that too, she laughed. Sarah drifted toward a nearby bench, close enough to be proper, far enough to give them room. Would you like to walk? Raphael asked. I would. He offered his arm. Georgiana hesitated for only a second before accepting. He guided her hand to the dark sleeve of his coat. They walked along the lake. My mother was furious, Georgiana said after a while. So was mine. My father was more understanding. Mine tried to be, Raphael said quietly. Sometimes, when he was still alive. She breathed in. Sometimes I wonder if I'll spend my whole life watching other people claim things that will never be mine. Raphael stopped. He turned her carefully toward him. Listen to me, he said, standing directly in front of her. You're not on the edge of life. You simply refuse to live in the small way they think you should accept. That doesn't change the world. No, he agreed, but it changes you, and it changes anyone who chooses to walk beside you. Georgiana went still. The park felt far away, too distant to interfere. Raphael, this is madness. It is, he admitted, not trying to deny it. But it isn't recklessness. I believe your mother will never approve. Perhaps not, he said, serious now. But I need you to know something. A brief silence, heavy with choice. I want to court you, Georgiana, openly, properly, no hiding places. Her breath deepened. Society will talk. It will, he replied. And I want it talking while knowing my intentions are clear. And even so, he said, touching her hand with care, as if sealing something before he asked for it. I am choosing to be here. Georgiana didn't move. Why? She asked, and the question came out smaller than it deserved. To everyone else I'm a burden, a limitation. Raphael didn't answer immediately. He stepped only close enough for her to feel his presence without being crowded by it. But not to me. Your blindness does not define who you are, Georgiana. If one day I ask you to marry me, he said softly without hesitation, it will not be out of defiance or pity or impulse. It will be because after knowing you, any life that doesn't include you would feel like a lie. The air seemed to shift. Georgiana lifted her hand slowly, not as a request but as a confirmation of something she had already decided she wanted to feel. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, then the curve of his cheek. The touch was attentive, focused, as if she were reading something that mattered. Raphael did not move. Her hand lowered again, slowly. Now I understand, she said, why this is dangerous. What? Because it makes me want to choose. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was decision. Then listen, Georgiana said. I won't promise to be easy, or discreet, or to fit where I was never made to fit. Good, Raphael answered. I've never known how to live any other way. She nodded. Then we try. We try. He lifted her hand and pressed it to his lips for a second. One small gesture, final. This is already a scandal, she murmured. I know. But I'm not being dragged into it. I know that too. Raphael offered his arm without haste. Come, he said softly, before I think too much. Georgiana hesitated only a heartbeat. Then she set her fingers on the sleeve of his coat. and accepted. They walked beneath London's sun, aware of the glances, the whispers, the weight beginning to gather around them. But together, and for the first time, that felt like enough. Chapter 9. The Choice. Georgiana knew the confrontation was waiting for her before she ever crossed the threshold. The carriage stopped precisely at 5. The footman opened the door without his usual cordial remark. "Miss Livingston," he said, his neutrality far too rigid to be natural. "Your mother requests your presence in the drawing-room immediately." Georgiana drew in a slow breath. Sarah touched her arm, barely. A small gesture, silent support. The drawing-room was on the 2nd floor. Georgiana counted the steps without thinking, her cane marking the rhythm ahead of her. Each one demanded more courage than physical effort. At the door, she stopped. There were voices inside, her mother's, her father's, and a third, female, older, trained to be obeyed. "Come in, Georgiana," Diana Livingston called. She entered. The air felt thicker, the room vast, the silence weighted with expectation. Sarah remained a single pace behind her, alert. "Sit," her mother ordered. Georgiana moved forward until her fingers found the arm of a chair. She sat carefully, hands folded in her lap. Her posture flawless, as if mastery over her own body were the one thing no one could take from her. "Georgiana," her father said after a brief silence, "we have a visitor. Lady Catherine Worthington, the Dowager Duchess of Queensberry." The world rearranged itself around that sentence. Raphael's mother. "Your Grace," Georgiana murmured, offering a small, seated bow. "Miss Livingston," Lady Catherine replied. Her voice was polished. Her intention was not. "I have come to clarify a situation before it becomes inconvenient." "About what?" Georgiana asked, calm by sheer discipline. "About my son." Silence fell, heavy, immediate. "I have been informed," the Duchess continued, "that you and Raphael were seen together in Hyde Park. Alone." Georgiana kept her chin lifted. "My companion was present." "At a comfortable enough distance to invite speculation," Lady Catherine returned, never raising her voice. "Hyde Park is not a place of anonymity, Miss Livingston. Certain behavior draws attention, especially when it involves a name already being watched with care." The message landed cleanly. This was not only about Georgiana. This was surveillance. "Watched by whom?" Georgiana asked, her voice steady despite the tightening in her chest. "By society, by the title, by the name Queensberry." "Or by control," Georgiana said before she could stop herself. "Georgiana," her father warned softly. But Lady Catherine smiled, a thin, measured thing. "That is precisely why I came in person," she said, "to prevent illusions before they become inconvenient. My son cannot involve himself with someone so unsuitable." The word struck like a dry blow. "Unsuitable," Georgiana repeated, heat rushing up her face. "Because I'm American? Because I'm blind? Or because I refuse to sit quietly in the place you'd like me to occupy?" Lady Catherine didn't blink. "All of it," she said. "Raphael has duties, and you do not fit them." "Mother," the voice came from the doorway. Raphael entered with firm steps, his presence filling the room before he even crossed it. Henrietta followed close behind, eyes bright with anger, her entire body taut with restraint. "What are you doing here?" Lady Catherine demanded, rigid. "Defending the woman I am courting," Raphael answered without hesitation. The air left Georgiana's lungs. "Courting?" the Duchess repeated, incredulous. "Yes." Raphael moved closer to Georgiana. He didn't touch her, but he stood near, deliberately near. Near enough that no one could doubt where he belonged, and I will not allow her to be treated like a social mistake. "Raphael, you're being reckless." He held his mother's gaze. "No, I'm being clear." Then he turned to Georgiana. "I need to say this in front of everyone," he said, "because you deserve clarity." Georgiana lifted her face toward him. "Georgiana Livingston, my intentions are serious. I am not playing with your reputation or mine. I chose you. Not in spite of who you are, but because of it." The silence became almost unbearable. "You cannot be serious," Lady Catherine said. "I have never been more serious," Raphael replied. Then he lowered himself to his knee before Georgiana and touched her hand, warning the gesture, so she would know exactly where he was. A collective intake of breath moved through the room. "Raphael," she whispered, startled. "I know it's early," he said. "I know it's improper. I know it will be difficult. But I also know I've never felt this for anyone." He held her hand with quiet steadiness. "Georgiana, will you walk with me, even if the entire world tries to stop us?" She was trembling. "People will judge us every day," she murmured. "They will. Your mother will try to destroy us." Raphael lifted his eyes to Lady Catherine. "I know her well enough to believe that," he said evenly. "But she won't succeed." "I don't know how to be a duchess," Georgiana confessed, barely more than a breath. "But I don't want a perfect duchess," he answered. "I want you." Tears came without warning. "Yes," she said at last. "Yes, I accept." The reaction was immediate. His mother gasped. Her mother pressed a hand to her chest. Henrietta, who had been silent until then, laughed, astonished and satisfied all at once. Raphael leaned in and kissed Georgiana's forehead. Brief, contained, final. It was enough to seal the scandal. Hours later, the house was unnaturally quiet. Lady Catherine had left furious and defeated. Henrietta was radiant. Diana Livingston had withdrawn into silence. Edward had shaken Raphael's hand and said only, "Take care of her." Now, on the back veranda, Georgiana breathed in the cool air beside him. "Your mother will never like me," she said. "Maybe not," Raphael answered, "but that changes nothing." "Nothing?" "Nothing." He kissed her forehead again. "In 3 months," he said, "we will be husband and wife." Georgiana smiled, still disbelieving. "This will be hard." "It will. But it will be worth it." Georgiana leaned into him, and she knew that even if the entire world turned against them, she had made the right choice, because for the first time she hadn't been tolerated. She had been chosen. Epilogue. Rain fell hard over London in the spring of 1886. Georgiana Worthington, Duchess of Queensberry, paused beneath the portico of the mansion and smiled as the drops touched her face. The sound was the same. The scent, too. 1 year. Exactly 1 year since the afternoon a stranger had taken her arm on a busy street and never let go. "Ready?" Raphael asked beside her. "Ready." He offered his arm, as he had since the very first day, as he always would. Georgiana rested her hand there, steady, confident, familiar. The carriage waited ahead, but before stepping inside she stopped. "Wait. What is it?" "I want to cross." Raphael lifted an eyebrow, amused. "The street?" "Yes. Like that day. It's raining. I know." "You're a duchess now," he said with a restrained smile. "You have a carriage. You don't need to cross streets in the rain." Georgiana turned her face toward him. "I had one then too," she replied calmly. "But I've always liked crossing, feeling the path beneath my feet. Walking the way people walk." Raphael studied her for a moment. No irony, no condescension, only understanding. "Then let's go." They crossed together slowly, rain sliding down their coats, their steps adjusting to one another. When they reached the other side, Georgiana laughed, free, open, whole. "Sarah will kill me for soaking the new dress," she said. "Sarah adores you," he replied. "She'll scold you too and then forgive you." "True." They climbed into the carriage, still smiling, the world outside blurred by rain. "Where are we going?" Georgiana asked. "Dinner with my mother." Her face twisted immediately. "Is that meant to reassure me?" "No," Raphael said, a corner smile appearing. "But it's progress. She said she had something important to say." "That never sounds comforting." He laughed and laced his fingers through hers. The engagement had been brief. The wedding discreet. 3 months had been enough to make it clear nothing would turn them back. Lady Catherine had tried objections, delays, strategic silences. None of it worked. By late summer, on a clear morning, Georgiana had become a duchess. The ceremony was small, intimate. Penelope as maid of honor, Daniel as best man, far too serious for someone who rarely took anything seriously. Sarah quietly crying at the back, and Lady Catherine present, rigid, but present. It was a beginning. The Worthington mansion rose imposing as the carriage stopped. Your Grace, Willis greeted them, formal and genuinely warm. Willis, Georgiana replied, smiling. How are you? Very well, Your Grace. The Dowager Duchess awaits you in the dining room. Raphael guided her through the corridors. Georgiana knew them by heart now, every turn, every step. 3 months had been enough for the house to stop feeling like foreign ground. Lady Catherine waited at the head of the table. Raphael, Georgiana. Still reserved, but less distant. Henrietta arrived soon after, accompanied by Daniel, both visibly lighter after the formal announcement of their wedding set for the following month, a decision society accepted without resistance. Dinner passed with excessive propriety, safe conversation, no open tension, until dessert was served and Lady Catherine set down her cutlery. I have something to say. Silence fell. Georgiana, she said directly, I owe you an apology. The world seemed to hold its breath. Lady Catherine, she corrected, if you will allow it. She drew a breath. I was wrong about you, about what you could be for my son, for this family. Raphael squeezed his wife's hand beneath the table. I have watched you, Catherine continued. I've seen how you inhabit this house, how you carry the title without trying to prove it, and I understand now that I judged you for the wrong reasons. Her voice faltered. You are an excellent Duchess, better than I imagined, and I regret everything I said and everything I thought. Tears came before Georgiana could stop them. Thank you, she murmured. There is one more thing. Catherine stepped closer and placed a small parcel directly into Georgiana's hands, guiding her fingers to the fabric. It belonged to the first Duchess of Queensberry. It is tradition to pass it on. Georgiana unwrapped it carefully. The antique brooch rested cool in her palm. She traced its outline with her fingertips, feeling the weight, the curves, the delicate craftsmanship. It's beautiful, she said softly, sincerely. It is yours now. Catherine touched her shoulder, a simple, final gesture. Welcome to the family, truly. Later, in the carriage home, Georgiana still held the brooch. Are you all right? Raphael asked. I am, just taking all of this in. He kissed her temple. I told you she would come around. It took a year, but she did. The rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet earth. Raphael stepped down first and offered his hand. Georgiana took it, as she always did. Raphael? Yes? Thank you. For what? For that day, for taking my arm, for not letting go. He drew her close. I should be thanking you, he said, for trusting me. Georgiana leaned into him. 1 year earlier, she had been just a woman standing on a noisy street, invisible to nearly everyone. Now she was a duchess, a wife, loved. Not because anyone had pitied her, but because someone had truly seen her. Come, Raphael said. Sarah must be waiting with hot tea. And a lecture, without a doubt. They went inside together, hand in hand. And Georgiana knew she had never needed to be saved. She had only needed someone willing to walk beside her, on any street, in any time, forever. That was the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did sharing it with you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with all the new videos. Your support means the world to me. And if you're craving more captivating tales, be sure to check out the other stories on the channel. I have plenty more coming your way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.